A wise man should be able to carry his happiness within himself. So said Diogenes of Sinope. But you were raised on the myth that a man proves his worth by bleeding for love. That the path to manhood is paved with longing glances, endless pursuit, and self-sacrifice in the name of romance. You were told that to chase her is noble, that to yearn is human. But no one told you the truth. This chase, this ritual of devotion, was never meant to honor you. It was meant to break you. And you paid the price. With your time. With your pride. With your soul. Diogenes, the philosopher who walked barefoot through the filth of Athens, who slept in a barrel and lit a lantern at noon claiming to search for one honest man, he saw through it all. While others wrote about virtue and justice, Diogenes mocked men enslaved by their desires. He spat at convention and laughed at the fools who bowed to beauty. A wise man, he said, should carry his happiness within. But you built yours on the smile of a woman, on her laughter, on her approval. And in doing so, you handed her the keys to your self-worth. You think you're chasing love, but you're only fleeing from yourself. Diogenes would have laughed at your tragedy. In fact, he once did. He saw a young man blush in the presence of a beautiful woman and shouted, "Don't be ashamed. The fault isn't yours, but nature's, for making such creatures irresistible to fools. You think your longing is poetic? He called it pathetic. You think your pursuit makes you a man? He saw it as weakness, dressed in cologne. Diogenes urinated in public. He pleasured himself in the marketplace. And when people gasped in horror, he replied, "If only rubbing my belly would cure hunger, too." He didn't do it because he lacked shame. He did it to expose yours. The shame that society has tied like a leash around your masculinity. You hide your instincts, not to master them, but to seem more palatable to the women you idolize. You play the gentleman, not because you believe in virtue, but because it increases your odds of being selected. You wear masks. Diogenes burned masks. You build pedestals. He smashed them to pieces. You walk into rooms scanning for beauty. He walked into rooms scanning for fools. And more often than not, he found them in the faces of men like you. Desperate, dolled up, parading like peacocks, hoping for crumbs of attention. "I threw away my cup," he once said, after seeing a child drink with his hands. He stripped his life down to the essentials. And you decorate your prison and call it passion. You chase silk when you haven't even mastered steel. But Diogenes wasn't against women. He was against illusion. And there is no illusion more lethal to a man than the belief that a woman's love will save him. He has the most, he said. Who is most content with the least? But you are never content. You scroll. You swipe. You wait for a text like it's oxygen. You sit alone, haunted by the ghosts of women who never loved you. Or worse, those who did. Until you gave them everything, and they lost interest. They told you to pursue. They told you to prove. But Diogenes didn't chase. He stood still and let the truth expose the world. When Alexander the Great, ruler of all the known earth, found him sunbathing and asked, What can I do for you? Diogenes didn't kneel. He didn't flatter. He didn't pretend to be impressed. And what did Diogenes say when Alexander the Great offered him anything in the world? He didn't kneel. He didn't flatter. He didn't pause. He simply said, "Yes. Stand out of my sunlight." That is power. That is freedom. That is the posture of a man who does not chase. But you chase women like they are the sun itself, as if their light gives you life. You orbit them like lost planets, desperate for warmth, starving for a glow that never lasts. You bend to their moods. You shrink to fit their fantasies. You carve off parts of yourself just to fit inside their expectations. And then you dare to call it love? Diogenes would call it what it truly is: slavery. Not because women enslave you, but because you walked into the chains on your own, smiling, hopeful, with a bouquet in your hand. He once said, "The most beautiful woman in the world is nothing without character. And character is nothing without truth. And the truth is this: most of what you call love is just your fear of being alone, dressed up in poetic language. Most of what you give isn't generosity. It's negotiation. You hand her your energy, your time, your ambition, just to get back a reflection of your worth. But that's not love. That's a trade. A transaction in disguise, gift wrapped in roses. And when that trade collapses, when she pulls back, when the warmth fades and she stops replying, you're devastated. But not because you lost her. You're broken because you lost the mirror that made you feel like a man. Diogenes needed no mirror. He didn't need approval. He faced the world bare. No flattery. No perfume on decay. No illusion. He called the lies out loud, until people were forced to laugh or rage. Because nothing terrifies the world more than a man who sees clearly. So I ask you, not as a preacher, not as a saint, but as a man, when will you stop chasing what cannot save you? When will you stop calling obedience love? When will you stop confusing self-erasure for connection? The woman isn't your enemy. Your illusion of her is. You call it loyalty, but it's dependency. You say it's passion, but it's addiction in disguise. You keep telling yourself, she's different. She sees me. She understands. But Diogenes said, it is the privilege of the gods to want nothing, and of godlike men to want little. So I ask again, what kind of godlike man whimpers at the silence of a woman who won't text him back? You were not born to orbit. You were not built to beg. You were built to build. But somewhere along the way, they taught you that your value comes from being chosen, not from choosing. Now you scroll like a beggar, smile through rejection like a clown, swallow your pride like a pill. And you call that dating? Diogenes would call it decay. He walked barefoot through the filth. He mocked emperors to their faces. He slept in a barrel and begged from no one. Yet even Alexander the Great, ruler of all the known world, stood in awe before him. Why? Because Diogenes had nothing to lose. And the man who has nothing to lose cannot be controlled. But you give her everything. Before she even asks. You lose sleep over her silence. You change your tone, your clothes, your life goals, to better align with her moods and preferences. And when questioned, you say, "I'm just being romantic." Diogenes would have barked in your face. He'd call it what it truly is: submission. And here's the truth that stings the most. She doesn't respect it. Not because she's cruel, but because, deep down, she knows what Diogenes knew. Anything that is chased loses value. What runs after something is not the possessor. It is the possessed. Women, consciously or not, aren't drawn to sacrifice. They're drawn to sovereignty. Not your willingness to please, but your refusal to fold. Your constant giving? It didn't make you unforgettable. It made you invisible. Your eagerness has made you forgettable. You think it's love. But to her, it's just noise. A background hum of desperation. And yes, she will leave. Maybe not today, maybe not loudly. But eventually. Not out of cruelty, but out of boredom, or habit, or fatigue. And when she goes, you'll feel betrayed. You'll feel hollow. But stop and ask yourself, what exactly did you love? Was it her soul? Was it her depth? Or was it just the way her presence covered the silence inside you? Did you love her? Or did you love the version of yourself you got to play when she was around? The way she made you feel, wanted, seen, validated. Was that the true prize? Because if it was, then what you lost wasn't love. It was your only mask. And that's where Diogenes would spit. Not to insult you, but to wake you. "I'm searching for a man," he once said. "Not a male. A man. A soul forged in fire. Not polished by praise. A man who can stand naked beneath the sky and still feel whole. A man who does not beg to be chosen, because he has already chosen himself. But you keep crawling back to the altar of women, not because they are divine, but because you've made them your gods. You bow, not to their worth, but to the reflection they offer you. And when they withdraw that reflection, your whole identity collapses. So you return to the world, bruised, limping, confused, looking for another savior in lipstick, another pair of eyes to hide in, another illusion to crawl beneath, because you still haven't figured out how to feel like a man without being seen as one. And that, my brother, is the real tragedy. You were trained to climb mountains, but never taught to confront your own mind. Taught to hunt for beauty, but never to ask, why? Why are you drawn to women who don't love you? Who barely tolerate you? Who only adore the version of you that serves them? And you thought that was normal. But Diogenes? He thought it was pathetic. Other dogs, he said, only bite their enemies. I bite my friends to save them. So let this be a bite. Not to harm you, but to wake you up. Stop chasing what runs. Stop offering your soul in exchange for scraps of validation. Stop lowering yourself and calling it romantic. Because a real man doesn't chase. He chooses. He builds. He walks forward. And if she wants to walk beside him, good. If not, he keeps walking. That was Diogenes. That can be you. But only if you're ready to abandon the dream and stare into the raw, unapologetic truth. The man who chases women is not noble. He is not brave. He is not romantic. He is lost. And no woman, no matter how breathtaking, will lead you back to yourself. But you keep telling yourself this is what it means to be a man. The hunger, the pursuit, the ache. You sing along to songs that equate pain with love. You watch movies that glorify obsession. You think your ability to suffer makes you worthy. But Diogenes would have laughed in your face. No, worse. He would have spit. Once, he stood before a statue and begged it for arms. When asked why, he said, "I'm training myself for rejection." That was his joke. His rebellion. His way of exposing how ridiculous begging truly is. Whether it's for coins or for a woman's attention. And here you are, living in the modern world, with access to wisdom, tools, freedom he could only dream of. And still, you beg. Not for bread, for validation. You called her 10 times after one silent night. You write long texts she never answers. You tiptoe in your own language, carefully choosing words, so you don't come off too needy or too cold. You live in a constant courtroom, defending your worth in front of a judge who's not even watching, and you don't see it. But you've become what Diogenes despised the most. A man enslaved by invisible chains. That's what the chase is. Not courtship. Not strength. Not love. Just servitude wearing a romantic costume. Your eagerness has turned you into noise. You call it love. But what she sees is desperation. And when she leaves, because eventually she will, not out of malice, but out of boredom, instinct, or simple fatigue, you'll feel betrayed. But ask yourself, honestly, what did you actually love? Did you love her? Or did you love who you got to be while standing next to her? Did you love her soul, her essence? Or did you love how her presence helped you hide your own emptiness? Diogenes would say, I'm looking for a man. Not just a male. A man. A soul forged by fire, not flattery. A man who can stand naked under the sky and still feel whole. Not a boy who needs a woman's love to validate his existence. Not a follower in search of a queen, but a sovereign ruler of his own being. And maybe that's the part that stings most. The realization that all this time, it wasn't her you were in love with. It was the feeling of being wanted. And when that feeling fades, so does your sense of identity. So what do? You go back into the world bruised, confused, looking for another savior in lipstick, another goddess to kneel before, another pair of eyes that might make you feel like a man, because you've never learned how to feel like a man without them. And that is the tragedy. You were taught how to conquer mountains, but not how to conquer your mind. How to seek riches, but not wisdom. How to attract women, but not question why. But when you finally ask why, when you finally stop and look at the life you've built, you realize it's been spent chasing shadows. Women who didn't want you. Women who tolerated you. Women who only loved the version of you that served them. And you thought that was normal. Diogenes didn't. He thought it was pitiful. He once said, "Other dogs bite only their enemies. I bite also my friends in order to save them. So let me bite you now, brother. Not to wound, but to wake. Stop chasing what runs. Stop offering your soul for scraps. Stop thinking love is earned through lowering yourself. A man who knows his value does not chase. He chooses. He creates. He walks. And if she wants to walk beside him, fine. If not, he keeps walking." That was Diogenes. That can be you. But only if you're willing to unlearn the dream and face the raw, difficult truth. The man who chases women is not noble. He is not brave. He is not romantic. He is lost. And no woman, no matter how beautiful, will ever lead you back to yourself. But Diogenes would call it what it is, delusion. He once said, "I do not possess, so I am not possessed." Understand this. The more you invest in a woman who hasn't earned it, the more she owns you. Not out of malice. Not even consciously. But power doesn't need to be intentional to be real. She controls your thoughts, your moods, your very sense of self. Simply by being the one you can't stop thinking about. And while you dream of her, what dreams inside you quietly die? While you're refreshing her last seen status, what parts of you remain unseen? You give your energy to her silence, her mystery, her chaos. But when will you turn that energy inward? When will you face the truth? That chasing her was never about her. She was just a distraction from yourself. She was the mirage that let you avoid the desert within. And that's why it hurts so badly when she leaves. Because when she disappears, the silence she leaves behind isn't hers. It's yours. Diogenes didn't run from silence. He lived in it. He filled it with laughter, truth, and defiance. He barked like a dog, not to entertain, but to expose. He made people uncomfortable, because he knew most of them were living a lie. And chasing women? It's just another lie. It's performance. You become an actor in your own life. And the more you perform, the more disconnected you become from the man underneath the mask. You want her to see you? You haven't even seen yourself. You want her to admire you? Yet you despise the way you bend and shrink, just to make her stay. And when she walks away, you shatter. But not because she broke you, because you gave her something fragile and begged her to keep it safe. Your self-worth. But that was never her job. She was never trained to hold your identity. She was just passing by. That's what Diogenes understood. The world owes you nothing. Not comfort. Not clarity. And definitely not love. He lived like a ghost in plain sight. Unimpressed by beauty. Unafraid of rejection. Unbothered by status. While other men gathered in temples to impress women, Diogenes dug in the dirt for simplicity. Not because he had no options, but because he had no appetite for illusions. And you hunger for illusion. You believe that if you perform well enough, long enough, she'll finally choose you. But the longer you wear the mask, the more she forgets who you really are. And one day, when she finally turns away, she's not leaving you. She's leaving the character you played. And you'll stand there, hollow, wondering if you ever truly existed at all. But you did. You do. And that's what Diogenes wants you to see. Not in her eyes. Not in her arms. But in yourself. In your breath. In your ability to stand alone. Without applause. Without attention. Without the warm blanket of feminine approval. Because that is where your freedom begins. There comes a moment in a man's life, maybe after yet another ignored message, maybe after seeing her laugh in another man's arms, when the pain stops feeling sharp and starts feeling familiar. Not a cut, but a dull ache. A ritual. The ache of realizing you were never in control. You weren't choosing. You were begging to be chosen. And Diogenes, he would have grabbed you by the collar. Not to scold you, but to wake you. He lived among dogs. Not because he loved filth, but because dogs don't pretend. A dog doesn't chase what doesn't want to be caught. A dog doesn't build identity around rejection. Diogenes believed that to live without pretending, that was the height of virtue. But every time you shapeshift for affection, every time you dim your truth just to stay acceptable, you are lying. Not to her, to yourself. He was once asked, "What is the most beautiful thing in the world?" He answered, "Freedom of speech." And yet here you are, censoring your thoughts, biting your tongue, softening your edges, fearing that if you speak your truth, she'll walk away. But maybe, if she leaves when you're finally honest, that's not a loss. That's your liberation. That's not love. That's captivity in disguise. You don't fear losing her. You fear facing yourself in her absence. You fear the silence, not because it echoes her leaving, but because it reveals how little of you was ever truly whole. Diogenes didn't fear silence. He made a home in it. He didn't run from solitude. He sat in the sun and claimed nothing, because when you own nothing, nothing owns you. But you You've pieced your identity together from borrowed gestures, copied lines, desperate charm. A glance you practiced in the mirror. A voice you softened to seem more gentle. And all of it was built not to be true, but to be chosen. Here's the brutal truth no one wants to say. If she didn't want you in your silence, she doesn't deserve you in your song. You've made your life a stage, every move a performance, every word a pitch. But for what? For what reward? A smile that fades? A maybe that turns into months of confusion? She doesn't even know what she wants, yet somehow you've crowned her queen of your masculinity. She doesn't even ask for the throne, but you hand it over. Willingly. Diogenes would have spat on that altar. He would have pissed on your pedestal. Because he understood something eternal. That the man who does not chase is not empty. He is whole. That being unseen by her is not a curse. It is a test. Will you finally see yourself now that she won't? You say you miss her. But what you really miss is the way she made you feel valid. You miss the mirror, not the soul behind it. If you loved her truly, you would love her even in her absence. If you loved yourself fully, you'd never need her to reflect it back. She is not the beginning. And she should never be your end. The beginning is when you stop running. When you finally sit still in your own skin, without apology or performance. When, like Diogenes, you say, I have nothing. I need nothing. I am enough. Not out of arrogance. Not out of spite. But out of clarity. Let her choose. Let her walk. Let her love someone else. That is not your death. That is your unveiling. That is the shedding of the false self. The death of the boy who thought love had to be earned through self-sacrifice. Diogenes didn't kneel. He stood. And that, my brother, is your task. Do not kneel. Not for her softness. Not for the illusion of completion. Not for a myth passed down from men who never found themselves. Stand. Stand in your hunger. Stand in your solitude. Stand in the sharp, clean pain of knowing this. No woman, not her gaze, her praise, or her warmth, will ever complete a man who hasn't met himself. She can walk beside you, but she cannot carry you. That is your burden, and your freedom. So burn the script. Kill the chase. Abandon the altar. Let her go. Because when you stop chasing her, you realize you were never chasing her at all. You were chasing the man you were meant to become. The man who never needed to chase.
Thanks for spending time here. If this resonated with you, give it a like, send it to a friend, and make sure you're subscribed. Your support means everything.